Daniel stood alone in the silent corridor of the alien station, the sound of his own breathing echoing through the helmet of his suit. Once, this station had been full of life, full of alien voices, lights, and the hum of machinery. Now it was dying, just like the crew who had fled and left him behind. He remembered the moment clearly. The alien commander had ordered evacuation when the enemy fleet appeared. Shuttles launched one by one, their engines glowing like fading stars. Daniel had run to the hangar, waving his arms, shouting that he was still here. But the last shuttle door had closed and the ship vanished into the dark. They did not look back. They did not wait for the human engineer. To them, he was not worth saving. The station trembled as if mocking his weakness. Panels sparked, gravity flickered, and cold air bit his skin through the suit. Daniel pressed his hand against the metal wall and whispered to himself, "If they wanted me dead, they should have checked twice." The words gave him strength. He was human, and humans never surrendered easily. He made his way toward the control deck, stepping over broken wires and shattered glass. Every corridor reminded him of abandonment, but also of possibility. The aliens had left in fear, but Daniel felt something different. He felt anger. He felt determination. His mind was racing with calculations, repairs, and designs. He knew that somewhere in the bones of this dying station there was life waiting to be restored. When he reached the main console, the screens were dead, but Daniel was not afraid. He pulled out his worn toolkit, the same one he had carried through years of service. Slowly, he rewired connections, bypassed broken circuits, and after hours of work, the lights flickered back to life. A weak glow filled the deck, and for the first time since the abandonment, the station felt awake. "Good girl." And he whispered to the machine as if it could hear him. The station responded with a low hum. The oxygen systems were damaged, the shields were offline, and most weapons were dead. Still, Daniel smiled. For him, this was not the end. It was the beginning. He checked the life support first. Oxygen was dropping. If he did nothing, he would suffocate in 2 days. He scavenged through the engineering bays, finding alien filters and tanks. They were not made for humans, but Daniel had always been good at adapting. He cut pipes, reattached valves, and patched leaks with pieces of his own suit. Hours later, oxygen levels began to rise slowly. It was not perfect, but it would keep him alive. Daniel sat down on the floor, exhausted but smiling. He had survived the first night. His stomach ached with hunger, but his heart burned with something stronger than fear. He thought of Earth, of all the times people had told him humans were fragile, weak, or too emotional. Now he was alone on an alien station, proving that humanity was more than anyone believed. As he worked, Daniel discovered things the aliens had overlooked. Beneath the layers of broken panels, there were storage vaults filled with strange technology. Some of it looked experimental, too dangerous for the aliens to touch. But Daniel's eyes widened with curiosity. Where they had seen danger, he saw potential. He activated one small device, and a hologram of blueprints filled the air. It showed a massive energy weapon, hidden deep in the station's design. Daniel's heart raced. The aliens had abandoned not just a broken station, but a sleeping giant, and now it belonged to him. He leaned back and laughed, the sound echoing through the empty halls. "You left me here to die," he whispered, "but I will make this place something you will fear." His voice was quiet, but the promise was clear. Outside the station, stars burned cold and distant. Enemy signals whispered in the void, scanning for weakness. Daniel knew they would come soon. He could not stop them with the station as it was, but if he worked, if he gave everything he had, then maybe, just maybe, he could turn this place into something more. The lights flickered again, as if the station itself heard his thoughts. Daniel stood tall, brushing dust from his suit. His mind was already full of plans, sketches, and ideas. He would rebuild, he would survive, and he would turn this abandoned station into the greatest weapon the galaxy had ever seen. He walked back toward the engineering bay, tools in hand, eyes sharp with focus. The shadows of the empty corridors no longer felt lonely. They felt like an army waiting to rise. Every wire, every beam, every broken machine was a soldier waiting for his command. And Daniel, the abandoned human engineer, was ready to lead them. Daniel woke to the faint rumble of the station's failing engines. His head rested against the cold floor of the engineering bay, and for a moment he thought he was dreaming, but the dim lights above him reminded him of the truth. He was still alone, abandoned on a dying station that everyone believed would never rise again. He sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. Around him were piles of alien tools, broken machines, and power cells that flickered with weak light. He had worked until his hands bled, patching oxygen systems, reviving consoles, and stitching together a skeleton of hope. Now he had to make a choice. Should he only survive, or should he build something greater? Daniel's eyes fell again on the hologram he had discovered the night before. The glowing blueprint of an enormous weapon hovered above the console like a ghost. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, alien technology combined with power levels that could destroy entire fleets. The aliens must have hidden it for fear of misuse, but to Daniel it was a challenge, a gift waiting to be unlocked. His heart raced as he studied it. The design was incomplete, sections missing, code scrambled. It was almost as if the aliens had tried to erase it. But Daniel was an engineer. His strength was not in raw power, but in seeing patterns where others saw chaos. His mind connected pieces like puzzles, filling gaps with logic and intuition. The deeper he dug, the more he realized this station was not a ruin. It was a treasure, a forgotten weapon hidden in plain sight. Now it was his. And if he could bring it back, he would never be the abandoned human again. He would be something far more dangerous. Hours turned into days as Daniel worked. He scavenged through abandoned quarters, pulling out wires, conduits, and scraps. He found alien drones deactivated in storage, stripped for parts long ago. With patience and sweat, he reassembled them, programming them to follow his commands. They were clumsy at first, bumping into walls and sparking when overloaded. But slowly they became his helpers, carrying tools, lifting panels, and even guarding hallways. One evening, as he rewired a core reactor, Daniel paused. The station groaned with a sound that felt alive. The lights grew brighter, the hum deeper. For the first time, he felt as if the station itself was waking up, like a wounded beast finding its strength again. He smiled, whispering, "We're not dead yet." But as the station grew stronger, danger crept closer. Daniel had tapped into the long-range scanners, and what he saw chilled his blood. Distant signatures of alien warlord ships moving slowly toward the sector. They were scavengers of war, hunters of weakness, and they had heard the same rumors Daniel feared, that this abandoned station was vulnerable, easy prey for plunder. Daniel stung. Owed at the console, his fists clenched. The aliens who had abandoned him thought the station would collapse into silence. The warlords thought they would find nothing but scraps. They were all wrong. Daniel stood at the main console, his eyes fixed on the scanner. The screen pulsed with red dots, each one a warlord ship drifting closer to the station. They were testing him, circling the system like hungry predators. He could almost hear their mocking voices across the void, laughing about the human left to die. The station shuddered as if it too felt the approaching threat. Daniel steadied himself, whispering, "Not yet, we are not ready." The drones around him hummed nervously, carrying spare wires and tools. Their glowing eyes flickered like small torches in the half-lit command deck. For days, Daniel had been building defenses. He turned old fuel lines into makeshift flamethrowers. He reprogrammed maintenance turrets into automated cannons. He patched the shield emitters with human creativity, using scraps the aliens had discarded. To others, it might have looked like madness, but to Daniel, it was survival. It was preparation. Still, doubt pressed on him. Could one human truly hold off fleets? Could one man's mind build enough to stop the inevitable? His heart whispered fear, but his hands answered with action. Every bolt tightened, every circuit linked, every drone rewired became a statement of defiance. Then, the silence broke. The scanner beeped sharply. One enemy ship had moved closer, too close. Daniel leaned forward, reading the signals. It was a scout testing the station's defenses. A small craft, fast and agile, but deadly enough to finish him if he had nothing prepared. He felt sweat roll down his back. His fingers tightened on the console. He could not show weakness, not even once. If the scout survived, it would signal the others. The wolves would know the prey was truly weak. Daniel whispered to the station, "It's time." His hand pressed a switch, and the power surged through the walls. Lights flickered, systems whined, the old maintenance cans. Ons groaned as they turned toward the void. The drones buzzed like restless hornets, waiting for his order. Through the cracked viewport, Daniel saw the scout approach, its sleek body glowing with red light. It fired a warning shot, a beam that grazed the station's side. Metal screeched, sparks flew, Daniel's jaw clenched. His station roared back. The automated cannons spat fire. Beams of blue energy tore through the void. The scout dodged left, weaving like a predator teasing its prey. But Daniel had planned for this. He had hidden charges inside the debris field floating around the station. To the scout, it looked like junk. To Daniel, it was a minefield. Closer, he whispered. His finger hovered over the trigger. The scout darted through the debris, red lights flashing. Suddenly, Daniel pressed the switch. The debris field erupted, silent explosions rippling through space. Shards of metal and bursts of energy slammed into the scout. The ship spun out of control, its engines flaming before it shattered into dust. Daniel let out a long breath. His chest ached, his heart raced, but he smiled. "One down," he muttered. The drones buzzed triumphantly, their lights flickering like applause. Yet even as he celebrated, the scanner screamed. More ships were moving in, larger this time, their red signals bright against the dark void. The warlords had seen the scout's destruction. They would not take him lightly now. They would come with anger, with numbers, with fire. Daniel stared at the scanner, his face lit by the glow of the screens. "Good," he said softly. His voice was calm, almost cold. "Let them come." He worked faster than ever. He rewired drones into suicide units, programming them to explode against enemy hulls. He rerouted failing energy cores into shield amplifiers. He welded broken panels with sparks flying against his visor. Every second mattered. The station groaned and trembled as systems came alive. The corridors glowed brighter, defense lines hummed. The superweapon blueprint hovered above the console, still unfinished, still waiting. But Daniel knew he needed time, and time could only be bought with blood. Outside, the first enemy destroyer entered the system. Its shadow fell across the station like a predator's claw. It was massive compared to the scout. Bristling with weapons, Daniel could almost feel its guns turning toward him. His hand tightened on the console. He whispered to himself, "You left me behind, and now I am the storm you feared." The destroyer fired. The station shook violently. Alarms screamed. Panels burst into sparks. Daniel staggered but did not fall. He shouted to his drones, "Activate defenses." The command deck roared to life. Cannons fired. Shields flared. Traps triggered. The battle had begun. Outside, beams of light ripped through space as the station fought back. Daniel's mind worked like a machine, shouting commands, rerouting power, calculating every strike. Every second was survival. Every strike was proof that humanity was not weak. The destroyer pushed harder, its weapons pounding the shields. The station groaned, but Daniel refused to let it break. He rerouted energy from non-essential systems, plunging whole sections of the station into darkness just to keep the shields alive. Then came his chance. The destroyer moved too close. Daniel activated the drone swarm. Dozens of machines buzzed out of the station, glowing like fireflies. They swarmed the destroyer, attaching themselves to its hull. The enemy tried to shake them off, but Daniel had programmed them with one final command. "Detonate," he whispered. The void lit up with fire as the drones exploded, ripping through the destroyer's armor. The ship convulsed, broke apart, and vanished into a storm of flames and wreckage. Daniel stood in silence, his breath heavy. His station floated bruised but alive. He pressed his hand against the console, whispering, "Two down." But even as the wreckage burned in the void, the scanner filled with more red dots. Dozens of ships now, fleets upon fleets. They were coming, and they would not stop. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it all. Then he opened them, fire burning within. He would not run. He would not bow. This station was his now. This weapon was his destiny. The shadows of the enemy were no longer distant. They were here, and the galaxy was about to see what one abandoned human could do. The station was quiet again, but it was not peace. The silence was the deep breath before the storm. Daniel stood in the command deck, surrounded by the faint glow of shattered screens and broken consoles. Outside, the wreckage of the destroyed warlord ships drifted like burning ash. But the scanner never lied. More enemies were closing in, not scouts, not destroyers, but fleets. Daniel wiped the sweat from his forehead. His body ached, his hands were raw, but his mind burned bright. He knew brute force alone would not save him. The station's defenses were powerful but limited. Against fleets, they would collapse. Unless he found something greater. Unless he finished what the aliens had hidden. He turned to the hologram again. The glowing projection of the unfinished superweapon floated above the console. It looked impossible. Its design stretched across dimensions of energy he had never seen. It was beyond human science, beyond alien science too. It was something in between, something half erased, half forbidden. Daniel whispered, "You wanted this forgotten." His voice trembled with awe, "But I will bring it back." He began with the power cores. The reactors were old and cracked, meant to feed simple systems, not weapons of this scale. Daniel stripped them apart, cutting into alien circuits, inserting human designs from memory. He remembered his time back on Earth, fixing broken machines with nothing but scrap and imagination. That was his gift. Humans were not the strongest, not the fastest, but they saw what others missed. They made the impossible work. The first attempt nearly killed him. When he tried to merge the reactors with alien conduits, the entire core chamber erupted in sparks. The walls trembled, alarms screamed, radiation surged dangerously high. For a moment, Daniel thought the station would explode. He dove for the controls, rerouting coolant manually. His fingers burned as he slammed emergency seals into place. Steam hissed, smoke filled the chamber, his lungs ached, his vision blurred, but he did not let go. Not until the readings dropped and the hum stabilized again. Daniel lay on the floor, coughing hard. His chest felt like fire, but a grin spread across his face. The impossible connection had held. The human design and alien power were now one. It was unstable, dangerous, but alive. He dragged himself back to the console. His eyes locked again on the hologram. The weapon was no longer just a dream. It was taking form. The days blurred together. He hardly slept, hardly ate. His drones worked endlessly, sparks flashing as they welded panels, carried power cells, and rebuilt shattered decks. Daniel pushed himself past exhaustion, fueled only by anger, by pride, by the thought of proving them all wrong. And always, in the back of his mind, the whispers of the enemy ships grew louder. They were coming. They were preparing. Soon his small victories would mean nothing unless he finished the weapon. One night, as the station floated in the endless dark, Daniel stared out the viewport. His reflection looked hollow. His eyes were sunken, his face pale, his hands shook. He was breaking, yet inside him something refused to stop. He thought of the aliens who had left him. He thought of Earth, of humanity's history, of people rising from ashes again and again. He whispered to his reflection, "We build when others break." He returned to the weapon core, piecing together fragments of alien design with human improvisation. He turned unused maintenance shafts into conduits for power. He transformed storage bays into capacitor chambers. Every corner of the station was now a piece of the weapon, but progress came at a cost. The more energy he fed into the weapon, the weaker the station's shields became. Power had to be divided. If he gave too much, he would be defenseless when the fleets arrived. If he gave too little, the weapon would never awaken. The choice tore at him. The wrong move meant death. Yet he pressed on. His instincts told him that if he could bring the weapon online, everything else would follow. Then, the scanners screamed again. The enemy fleets had entered the system. Dozens of ships spread like a dark storm across the stars. Daniel stared at the red swarm filling the screen. His stomach twisted. His chest felt heavy. "They're here," he whispered. The warlords hailed him on open channels. Voices filled with mockery and cruelty echoed across the command deck. "Human," they sneered. "We know you are alive. We saw the fire you lit. Surrender, and maybe we will spare you. Fight, and we will grind you into dust." Daniel's lips curled into a grim smile. He reached forward, turning off the channel. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the weapon core. He whispered back, not to them, but to himself, "Let's see who breaks first." The station's lights dimmed as power shifted toward the weapon. The floor tremors bled beneath his boots. The air vibrated with raw energy. The weapon was not complete yet. But it was waking. It was hungry. Outside, the fleets closed in, their red lights flashing across the void. The station shook under the weight of alarms. Red lights flashed across the command deck. The scanner was filled with crimson signals, enemy fleets swarming like a tide of fire. Daniel stood at the console, his jaw tight, his hands steady despite the chaos. He had been waiting for this moment, and now it was here. Outside, warlord ships formed their attack line. Dozens of cruisers, destroyers, and carriers lit the void with their weapons. They thought they were hunting prey. They thought this abandoned station was weak. But Daniel had prepared. He had turned ruin into resistance, scrap into strength. The first barrage struck. Beams of plasma hammered the shields. The floor trembled. Sparks burst from the walls. The drones scrambled to patch the damage, their tiny sparks of light darting like fireflies across the decks. Daniel did not flinch. He rerouted power, balancing life support and shields with precision only a desperate human could master. "Hold," he whispered, his voice calm but sharp. "Just hold." The fleets drew closer, confident, mocking. Over the open channel, their voices filled the air again. "Human, surrender now. We see your shield fading. Your death is near." Daniel ignored them. His eyes were fixed on the glowing core of the weapon. The hologram above the console pulsed like a living thing, incomplete but ready to breathe fire for the first time. He had not tested it. He had not even calibrated it fully. But waiting meant death. Risk was survival. He slammed his hand onto the activation panel. The deck shook as the weapon core roared to life. Power surged through the station, lights flickering as if the walls themselves were alive. The air burned with static. Daniel felt his skin prickle, his hair rise. It was as if he stood inside the heart of a storm. From deep within the station, energy built. A low hum turned into a scream of power. The droned. Ness retreated. The lights dimmed. Every system bent toward the weapon. Then, with a thunderous vibration, the superweapon fired. A beam of energy burst from the station, so bright it carved a line through the void. It struck the lead enemy cruiser with the force of a star. The ship shattered instantly, its hull ripped apart like paper. The explosion lit up the system, pieces of burning metal scattering across space. The fleets froze in shock. For a moment, the warlords did not speak, did not fire. They had expected weakness. Instead, they saw a human wielding power greater than their fleets. Daniel leaned forward, his hands gripping the console. His chest heaved, sweat dripped from his brow. He whispered, "One strike." His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "One strike, and you know I am not prey." The enemy recovered quickly. Their pride could not allow fear. They roared across the channel, their voices furious. "That was luck, human. Your station will burn." The fleets advanced again. Thousands of weapons lit the void. The station's shields buckled under the assault. Warning sirens wailed. Daniel's eyes burned with focus. He rerouted energy again, pulling power from the weapon to keep the shields alive. If he tried to fire again too soon, the station might collapse. Still, the first strike had changed everything. Rumors spread across the enemy lines. Voices whispered, "He has the weapon we thought was dead." Their fear bled into their movements. Hesitation crept into their attack. Daniel seized the moment. He commanded his drones to swarm. They flew out in waves, carrying explosives strapped to their frames. Small but relentless, they darted toward the nearest destroyer. The warlord ship fired, destroying many of them, but enough got through. Explosions rippled across its hull, tearing open its armor. The ship convulsed before breaking apart. The enemy fleet growled back with rage. 3 more ships advanced at once, firing volleys of plasma. The station shook violently. Consoles exploded. Smoke filled the deck. Daniel staggered but did not fall. His lungs ached. His hands bled, but his eyes were still sharp. He whispered to himself, "Not yet. You don't break me yet." He rerouted power again, pushing the weapon to charge. The lights dimmed dangerously. The shields flickered like glass ready to shatter. But the weapon core glowed brighter, building again toward its second strike. Outside, the fleets pressed closer, their captains confident that this time the human could not hold. Daniel gritted his teeth, staring at the scanner. At the precise moment the destroyers closed in, he slammed the activation again. The weapon screamed as it fired. Another beam of energy tore across the void. 2 destroyers were caught in its path, both shattered instantly, explosions blooming like dying stars. The third ship veered off in panic, fleeing back into the swarm. The fleets were no longer confident. Their formation broke, their voices cracked with doubt. Daniel stood over the console, breathing hard. His body trembled, his vision blurred. Every use of the weapon drained him as much as it drained the station, but he smiled through the pain. His whisper was almost a growl. "This is my station. This is my weapon." Still, the scanner glowed red. More ships were coming, reinforcements from deeper space. The warlords were furious now. They would not stop until the station was dust. Daniel looked up at the hologram. The weapon was not yet complete. The strikes he had unleashed were only fragments of its true power. If he could finish it, if he could unlock the last sequences, he could burn entire fleets in a single breath. But time was slipping through his fingers. The fleets would arrive in full force soon. He had to choose key. Fighting with what he had or risk everything on finishing the weapon. His chest rose and fell. His eyes locked on the storm of red signals filling the scanner. He whispered to the station, "We're not done. Not until they fear humanity." The first strike had been made. The galaxy now knew the human was not dead, not abandoned, but rising. And the real war had only just begun. The station floated in the endless void like a wounded beast. Its shields flickered, its hull scarred by fire. Yet in the command deck, Daniel stood tall, his eyes locked on the scanner. The enemy fleets had grown larger. Hundreds of red signals now swarmed across the system. It was no longer a hunt. It was a war. Daniel's chest heaved with exhaustion. His body begged for rest. But his mind was sharper than ever. He knew the strikes he had unleashed were only fragments. The weapon was not finished. Not yet. And unless he completed it, the fleets would crush him beneath their endless fire. He turned back to the glowing hologram. The incomplete design of the weapon floated before him, pulsing with alien lines of energy and human-coded repairs. Each missing piece taunted him. Each gap whispered failure. But Daniel was not listening to failure anymore. He was listening to the hum of the station, the living roar of a weapon waiting to be born. He moved quickly, his hands flying over the consoles. His drones carried energy cells, connected conduits, and welded plates into place. Sparks showered the corridors. The entire station pulsed with unstable energy. It was dangerous, reckless. It was survival. The weapon core blazed brighter, vibrating through the decks. Alarms screamed as the heat levels rose. Daniel gritted his teeth. Every warning told him to stop, that the station would tear itself apart. But he pressed on, his voice a whisper. "You don't stop. You finish." Outside, the fleets moved into firing range. Their captains roared across open channels, their voices dripping with pride and hate. "Human, you fight well, but your fire is nothing against an empire. This time you die. Your station will be torn to dust." Daniel ignored them, his focus narrowed to the final sequence of the weapon. The last code was corrupted, erased by alien hands who had wanted this weapon buried forever. But where the aliens erased, Daniel created. He rewrote the missing codes with his own designs, weaving human logic into alien fire. His hands shook as he entered the final command. The deck trembled as if the station itself was holding its breath. For a moment, there was silence. Then the weapon core erupted, light burst across the command deck. The hologram shattered into raw energy. The station roared as power flowed through every wall, every circuit, every cannon. Daniel staggered back, shielding his eyes. But through the blinding glow, he smiled. The weapon was alive. Its hum filled the void like the growl of a sleeping god. Outside, the fleet slowed, their captains watching with sudden unease. The station glowed with a terrifying aura, its broken hull now lit by streams of energy flowing like veins of lightning. Daniel's voice was low but sharp. "Now you see." The fleets opened fire. Thousands of plasma bolts streaked across space. They hammered into the station's shields, shaking it violently. Alarms screamed, consoles burst into sparks. Daniel staggered but stayed on his feet. His hand slammed against the weapon controls. "Fire," he whispered. The superweapon unleashed its first true strike. A beam of energy erupted from the station, wider and brighter than anything before. It tore through space, cutting through enemy ships like a blade through glass. Entire cruisers disintegrated in seconds, destroyers shattered, carriers broke apart. As their engines exploded, the void lit up with fire, the fleets panicked, their channels filled with chaos. Impossible. That weapon was dead. How can one human? Their voices cut off as more ships burned. The formation collapsed, fear spreading like fire among them. Daniel leaned over the console, his body trembling. The weapon had worked, but the cost was brutal. The energy drain nearly collapsed the station. The lights flickered. Half the decks plunged into darkness. His lungs burned from the smoke. His hands bled from shattered panels, but he smiled through the pain. They wanted me dead, he whispered, but I became more. The fleets regrouped, furious now. Their pride would not allow retreat. They poured everything into their attack. Plasma storms rained against the station. Missiles shook the hull. Entire sections tore apart. Drones were destroyed in waves. The station screamed like a wounded animal. Daniel's vision blurred. He coughed, his chest heavy. He knew he could not survive wave after wave like this. Unless he unleashed the full power of the weapon, the risk was simple. If he failed, the station would tear itself apart and kill him instantly. If he succeeded, the fleets would burn. He stood tall, gripping the console. His eyes burned with defiance. Then we burn together, he whispered. He rerouted every reactor, every system, even life support, into the weapon. The lights died across the station, plunging it into near darkness. Only the core glowed. Its scream grew louder, vibrating across the void. The fleets hesitated, fear rippling through their ranks. Then the weapon fired again. Not a single beam this time, but a storm of energy. Dozens of lances of light erupted from the station, carving through fleets in every direction. The void exploded with fire and wreckage. Ships shattered like toys. Captains screamed as their vessels were consumed. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds. Daniel's body collapsed against the console, his breath ragged, his vision fading. But he forced himself to stay awake. His whisper was almost broken. This is what happens when you leave a human behind. The scanner cleared of signals, but new warnings filled the screen. More fleets were on the way, bigger, stronger. The warlords were calling everything they had. The final battle was coming. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the hum of the weapon beneath his feet. He had revealed its true power, and the galaxy now knew, but the cost was far from over. The storm was not finished. And Daniel, the abandoned human engineer, was ready to face it. The station drifted in silence. Its hull was cracked, its shields flickering, fires burning across broken decks. Yet at its heart, the weapon still pulsed with the glow of a star. Daniel leaned against the console, his breath heavy, his vision blurred. He had done the impossible. He had turned death into fire, ruin into power, but the scanner did not let him rest. New signals appeared, larger and stronger than before. The warlords had sent their full force, hundreds of ships, carriers, dreadnoughts, and siegecraft. Their combined fleet was enough to erase planets. They came not only for revenge, but to silence the story of a human who defied them. Daniel's lips curled into a weak smile. Good, he whispered, his voice cracked but steady. Let them all come. The command deck trembled as another wave of missiles struck. Drones rushed like sparks to patch the damage, but there were too few left. The station bled power, corridors collapsed, oxygen leaked into the void. Yet Daniel's hands never left the console. His mind burned with calculations. His spirit roared with defiance. The warlords hailed him once more, their voices booming with fury. Human, this is your end. You have humiliated us long enough. We will burn you and scatter your ashes into the void. Daniel shut off the channel. He did not need their words, he only needed the hum of the weapon, the rhythm of survival. He knew the truth. The station could not last much longer. The weapon consumed too much. The shields were already at their limit. If he unleashed the full core again, it might kill him. But if he did nothing, the fleets would drown him in fire. There was no safe path. There was only one choice. Fight until the end, he whispered. Then the end will remember me. The fleets opened fire. The void lit up with storms of plasma and missiles. The station shook like a dying beast, but Daniel's voice rose above the chaos. Shields down, all power to the core. The lights across the station died, plunging it into darkness. The only glow was the weapon, burning brighter and brighter. The core roared like thunder. Energy surged through every corridor. Every wall shook. Daniel gritted his teeth, blood dripping from his hands as he held onto the console. Outside, the fleets hesitated. Their captains shouted in fear. He's charging again. Stop him before it's too late. Their dreadnoughts fired. Massive blasts tore into the station's hull, ripping chunks into the void. Daniel's body slammed against the deck, pain exploding through him, but he forced himself up. His eyes blazed. "Fire!" he commanded. The superweapon unleashed its wrath. A storm of light erupted, beams tearing across the void in all directions. Fleets shattered like glass. Dreadnoughts cracked apart. Carriers split into fire. The void lit up like a new sun had been born. The screams of warlords echoed and then fell silent. Daniel collapsed against the console, his vision dim, his chest heavy. He had destroyed them, hundreds of ships reduced to burning wreckage. The system itself glowed with debris and fire, but the cost was too great. The weapon core reamed, alarms wailed, energy surged out of control. The station was tearing itself apart. Daniel knew he had pushed it too far. The weapon was alive but unstable. It could not hold. The station was dying, and with it, perhaps him. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the hum wash over him. He thought of Earth, of humanity, of every person who had ever been told they were weak. He thought of the aliens who had abandoned him, and the galaxy that now feared him. His whisper was soft but sharp. "They left me to die, but I became their nightmare." The station's core erupted again, not as a weapon this time, but as a dying star. The explosion consumed the wreckage, a storm of fire swallowing everything. For a moment, it looked as if the human and his station had vanished forever. But legends have a way of surviving. Weeks later, across the galaxy, whispers spread. The warlords were gone, their fleets destroyed, their arrogance shattered. And at the center of the story was a single human, abandoned, forgotten, who rose alone and turned a dying station into the weapon that changed the stars. Alien councils spoke his name with fear. Captains told the tale in hushed tones. Soldiers whispered it as a warning. Humanity, they said, was not to be underestimated. For even one human left to die could shake the galaxy. And somewhere in the ruins of the system, the wreckage drifted, silent and glowing. Some swore they saw light still flickering, as if the station's heart still beat, as if Daniel's will still lingered, watching, waiting. The abandoned human engineer had become more than a survivor. He had become a legend, a shadow etched into the stars.